Cam Ward is the consensus number one pick in this year's NFL draft. But will the Titans make the pick or perhaps trade it away? We'll talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown, live. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino with you for the Big Blue Breakdown. So glad you could join us for another fun-filled, well, at least an hour, maybe 90 minutes. We'll see how it goes. And tonight, we're going to go right to the heart of the matter. You know, since I got back from the Combine in Indianapolis, I spent a whole week out there. And it was quite clear that momentum was building each and every day for Miami Hurricanes quarterback Cam Ward, not only to separate himself from all of the other quarterbacks in what is supposed to be a mediocre quarterback class, but he was clearly going to be the first pick in the NFL draft. So I wanted to bring in Miami Hurricanes post-game radio host Alex Donno, who joins us now. And I figured let's just go right to the source, because it seems to me that Cam Ward, who has a lot of upside, Alex, although he's not the perfect prospect, it does seem to me that no matter how we cut it, this guy's going to be the top pick. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, having the privilege of covering Cam Ward all last season, first met him in January of 2024 when he arrived in Miami after transferring from Washington State, being able to speak to him, being able to watch him practice. One of the first things that stands out about Ward is he's got insane work ethic, Paul. And I know you always like to say that about NFL prospects. They all have to work hard to get where they are. But, for about 20 years, I've been covering Miami Hurricanes football, been covering Miami Dolphins football close a lot of those years. And I don't know if I've ever encountered someone whose life is as devoted to football, eats, sleeps, everything football as Cam Ward. So the work ethic really stands out, which obviously paid dividends for Miami's offense. The defense is really what kept Miami from winning a couple of extra games last season, but hardest working guy in the room. And he's a true alpha. If he ends up, obviously the expectation is that he'll probably end up a Tennessee Titan. But I will say, if Ward does end up in New York, if the Giants were to make a trade and move up, this is not someone you would worry about, with the lights being too bright in the Big Apple and getting kind of chewed up and spit out by the New York media, any of those cliches that people say about highly touted players. He's got a great head on his shoulders, and he's good at dealing with that outside noise and just kind of keeping it to himself. And then, the obvious thing, of course, everyone wants to talk about is Cam Ward, the quarterback. As he proved it in his pro day, which I had a chance to cover about a week and a half ago at Miami, he's capable of making every throw. He actually, someone else gave me this stat. I wasn't counting every single throw he attempted, but 80 of his 85 throws apparently were right on the money. Whoever drafts Cam Ward, you're going to get someone with really rare escapability. He's athletic. He can run. He's not a run-first quarterback. He's a pass-first quarterback, but he's very elusive. He manipulates the pocket very well. And he's just one of those, every now and then you see those quarterbacks that have the eyes on the backs of their heads where you've got, a free rusher coming from the blind side, and he's always able to step away, make that guy miss. That was something that really impressed folks in Miami. And, if we can talk about it, you mentioned he's not a perfect prospect. Of course, I get that. Part of what people would maybe say is the concern about Cam Ward is also partly what makes him so special. It's a double-edged sword. He can be a bit of a gunslinger at times. He can take some risks. He can make some unconventional throws. There were a number of times at Miami and also when he was at Washington State where, he's being taken to the ground by a defender and he'll kind of toss out a shovel pass or something like that. And a lot of times he was able to actually complete those and improvise and make something out of nothing. But other times it happened a couple times last season at Miami. He'll make a cross-body throw that he sometimes completes these throws, but it could go. It happened probably twice last year. It could go for a costly interception. So, the gunslinger mentality is part of what makes him great, but it's also maybe part of what makes his style of play just a little bit risky for the next level.
All right. So let's kind of backtrack just a little bit,
Yeah.
because as I said, the momentum for him as the number one pick really started to pick up at the combine, but yet his season was already over. It kind of puzzles me how all of a sudden he was a late riser when the games were from September to January. If you watch the games, you saw his toolbox. Why do you think he was so suppressed amongst the draft conversations until the combine?
It's a tremendous question. I think part of it is the interview process. I think when he started really sitting down and talking with teams, obviously we don't get to see what goes on in those meeting rooms. Unfortunately, that's the greatest part of like the scouting combine that none of us get to watch. But I would imagine just getting to know Ward a little bit last year probably, blew away the execs when he was breaking down his own film and kind of talking about his mentality. I think that's part of it. Obviously, I can throw in the pro day again, but you make a great point. Like he was already the consensus number one guy even before his pro day last week. I think a big part of it is a lot of the NFL personnel people, from September to early January are so consumed with what's going on within their own organizations. I think maybe they didn't take as deep of a dive into some of the film and some of the other stuff until maybe right after the season was over. I've got to think that's part of it, because it was interesting journey throughout the year. Because heading into the 2024 college season, I was under the impression that, and even for the first half of the season or so, Shedeur Sanders, probably going to be the number one quarterback, probably going to be the number one pick. But then at some point later on in the season, and even after the season, you clearly saw Ward moving ahead. I can't put my finger on it 100%, but I've definitely been watching the odds of who's going to get drafted first, and the margin keeps widening in Cam Ward's favor. So he's doing something since January that's making folks feel better about him.
Alex, I make a habit of, when I go to the combine, I always like to make sure that I go to the podium and I listen to the media sessions of certain guys who I've picked out. I want to see how they handle themselves. I also want to see physically their body language. I want to see their frame and what they look like. He certainly had a winning media session at the combine. There's no question about that. He's confident. He's assertive. He's professional. Really good media session. The one thing I will tell you that did surprise me a little bit, and then I found out at least what it looks like on film, that when he played at Miami, he must have had a flak jacket on or something, because I'm going to tell you something. He looks rather slight when you see him in person, and he doesn't have his gear on. And to be frank, I'm a little concerned about his durability, because with his ability to run, he is going to take hits.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where, obviously there's different traits that make you a great college player versus a truly great NFL player. So, of course, he's probably going to get hit more 2025 in the NFL than he did 2024 at Miami. One of Miami's biggest strengths, offensive line. He was protected very well down here. I mean, I will say in Cam Ward's favor, I saw him take some hits that made you hold your breath a little bit. He always got right back up. So to this point in his career, like, he's not had an injury prone label. He's not been one of those guys. I can't remember anything even going back to his time at Incarnate Word, where he started his career, of him having any injury issues. So the track record is there, but obviously it's different in the NFL. I mean, everybody's bigger at that level, right? Every hit you take is going to be harder than the ones that you take in college. So I wonder about that. I mean, I was never, he's obviously, he's in, like, I don't know, probably the 6'2", 6'3" range. So he's obviously not like on the highest tall end of quarterback prospects. I never really felt last season like the frame was so slight, but maybe it was because I was watching him in the gear all the time. But that's not like overtly. I'm glad you bring it up, because again, it's different at the NFL level. But as far as his time in college, it was never really an injury concern for me to this point with Ward.
You know where you notice it? When all these different quarterbacks are at the podium, and you look at a Jackson Dart, who's built like a running back, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to disrespect Ward in any way at all. He's built how he's built. But when you see, all of a sudden you see a couple of seats down, you see Jackson Dart, and he's got some guns. and he's got some
Mhm.
thickness, and we know he likes to run as well. And you say to yourself, okay, well, I think that guy's got a better chance of holding up under NFL pressure. That was just an observation I had, and I'll be frank with you, I don't know anybody else who had that observation. That's why I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was not the biggest guy in Miami's quarterback room last year. He was far and away the best in Miami's
Yeah.
quarterback room, believe me. But he was not. Miami also had a 6'7" true freshman quarterback and a pretty big bodied backup quarterback in Emory Williams, who's 6'5". So what Ward was probably out of Miami's four quarterbacks, he was probably the third biggest or the second smallest in the group, but he makes up for it in a lot of other ways.
All right, let me ask you this. What is the one thing that you guys know about Ward down in Miami because you cover him every day, and maybe the fans even know it, but that the rest of the country doesn't know about it?
Here's the big one for me, and maybe these stories are starting to get out a little bit more that, Cam Ward is being so talked about in NFL circles, but he is a big trash talker, Paul. And I think he carries it well. Like, he's not mean-spirited about it, but he's always going to be yapping at you. If he completes a big pass, he's going to be jawing at the defense. He's going to, taunt you a little bit. If he does run the football and gets a couple extra yards and gets out of bounds, he's going to look and point at that linebacker who
Oh,
chased him out of
jeez.
bounds. And it
That
was
could be
something that
dangerous in the NFL, Alex.
it
That
could
could
be.
be very
It could be.
dangerous.
Yeah, there was an instance, when Miami opened up their season at the Florida Gators last year. He did that. He kind of like danced out of bounds a little bit, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm glad that linebacker didn't hit him in the face or something." But it's one of those things you'll notice if he does end up being a Giant, and you're out there covering practices, it's going to be a lot of fun watching Ward. And again, this is not mean-spirited stuff, on the practice field, or like he's not like a cocky, mean guy, but he's just going to be constantly jawing and talking to you. And there were a couple of other, Miami Hurricanes teammates of his, linebacker Wesley Basaint and one of his offensive linemen, Inez Cooper, who also like to talk a lot. And it seemed like they kind of had like a little bit of a competition as to who could get some of the best one-liners out there. So that's something that people may not know. And again, I know some people will hear me say he talks trash and they'll think I mean this in a negative way. A lot of it is to kind of keep his teammates engaged and build him up. And it's just who Cam Ward is. Like, he's very enthusiastic about football, and it's about to be his career. I mean, I guess you could say it is already now with NIL. He was already making millions of dollars in college, but he's about to be a professional football player, but he still approaches the game like he's playing with his friends in the backyard. Like, that's just how he approaches football.
Alex, if you can, and I know this is probably a little more difficult to answer, but we know the Titans have the number one pick. They seem like they're very interested. I personally don't think there's any way they trade out. I think they're taking him point blank. I don't think there's any offer that anybody can make short of a Mike Ditka, Ricky Williams kind of deal where they trade the whole draft to go get him. I just don't see it happening. But can you tell, based on the interest of, let's say, the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants, the top three teams, have you been able to gauge at all who seems to be the most hot?
Yeah, I mean, it's you said it. It's I think he's pretty much solidified his stock with the Tennessee Titans keeping the pick, barring something crazy. And when Cam Ward had his pro day last week in Coral Gables in Miami, all 32 teams were represented. All 32 NFL teams were out there, including, of course, a big contingent from Tennessee. And they were spending a lot of time around him and talk. Like, it seems as though, and Ward even said something to Callahan and the Titans contingent after he completed one of his throws in the workouts. He runs by him and he says, "I'm solidifying it today," he said to them, which was kind of an interesting, cool moment out there. So I think, if anything, we've known for a couple of months that Ward is cemented as the number one overall pick. But I think what's becoming clearer over the last couple of weeks is the Tennessee Titans are probably going to stick with that. You never say never, because everyone has a price. And I do think it is calculated, because I've seen some interviews with folks in the Titans organization who still are kind of keeping it open, like, hey, you know what, maybe we're not fully decided yet on the number one pick. So they're, I feel like it's a little smoke screenish in that regard, but I guess there's nothing wrong with keeping the mystery out there in case, a Cleveland or a New York is willing to make you a big offer. So, he's going to be the number one overall pick. My expectation is he's going to be a Titan, but maybe we'll get that suspense for the next 3 weeks before the draft actually happens.
Let me ask you this. As he goes to the NFL, besides the risk-taking, the forcing, or the hero ball, if you will, what is the other element of his game that you're going to be most curious to see as he makes the jump that maybe you're scratching your head and saying, I'm not so sure if he can do that?
Well, he had an issue at Washington State. He cleaned it up for the most part at Miami, where he was known as a fumbler coming out of Wazoo. Because I the same way you're studying Cam Ward now for the NFL, when I studied him when he transferred from Washington State to Miami, I was looking for the negatives, and he had, I think double-digit fumbles for 2 straight years at Washington State. I know he worked on his ball security at Miami, and so it seems like he at least temporarily fixed that issue. Also, again, Miami had a really good offensive line, so that probably helped the situation. So I think that's something to look out for. And,
Alex, if I can interrupt for a second, was it because
Yeah.
he was carrying the ball with one hand like a loaf of bread?
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Carrying the ball like a loaf of bread. And sometimes, and this ties back into the risk taking, because it's not just the throws. There can be some risk taking when nobody's open, pocket breaks down, and he's going to try to squeeze every last extra yard. And I could see something that he was consciously working on last year. I think later in the season, he got a little bit more like habitual with this. Is it's okay to throw it away sometimes, right? That's Ward doesn't always have that mentality where, hey, I could either throw this out of bounds and live to play another day, or Jacoby George maybe 60 yards down the field and I can connect with it. And sometimes he did. Sometimes he did it. So a lot of it ties back to that. And I'm also curious, again, like how much he's going to try to run at the NFL level, because he's capable of doing it. But again, he's always going to be a pass first quarterback. Like he's someone, like he's not a Lamar Jackson type where it's more of a 50-50 or more leaning towards a runner early in his career. No, Ward is more of he's got the athleticism in his back pocket. If he needs it, he can take off and run. So I'm curious to see how much he does that in the NFL.
All right. Alex Donno, the Miami Hurricanes radio post-game show host. Where else can people look at your content? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people still interested in Cam Ward before we get to the draft.
Yeah, and I'm still interested in Cam Ward. And it's funny, Paul, his parents still come to Miami. They don't even live in Miami. His parents still show up at Miami practices in spring. Not even on the team anymore. His parents are still showing up to practice. And so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, during the season, I do all the post-game shows on WQAM radio in Miami, which is the flagship for the Hurricanes. So I'm always on for about 3 hours after the game, good, bad, or ugly. We're there for you guys. And I host a daily podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I host Locked On Canes, where, of course, we've been talking a lot about Cam Ward leading up to later this month. And, of course, we talk about Carson Beck, Miami's new quarterback, and everything going on down there. So, yeah, you can find me every day at Locked On Canes. And during the season, you can find me on 560 WQAM.
You just sparked something for me on your last comment. Carson Beck is one of those quarterbacks, obviously the transfer coming into Miami. He's one of those quarterbacks who a lot of people are looking at for the class of 2026. What to this point do you know about him? Because to those people who don't think this class is very good, and after Ward, maybe you shouldn't take a QB and you should wait till next year. They're looking at Beck as being one of those guys who could be a first rounder next year. What have you found out about him so far?
Yeah, well, it's all been Georgia tape, because unfortunately Beck is I haven't had a chance to see him actually throw in person because he's recovering from an elbow injury. Right. He should be cleared soon. But of course, I watched him a lot at Georgia. He's got prototypical to high end size. He's got an NFL caliber arm. There's no question about it. And is typically, he had a few lapses last year because Georgia had some other issues on their offense. Georgia was not nearly as good of an offensive team in 2024 as they were in 2023. So I think he was maybe forcing things a little bit at times at UGA last year. But overall, I can't, Carson Beck to me, and I'll have to reevaluate this once I start seeing him throw in person, but it looks to me like he's going to be a serviceable pro quarterback. I think the big difference between him and a guy like Cam Ward is that I think Cam Ward is more of a truck and Carson Beck is more of a trailer. That Carson is going to depend a little bit more on the talent that's around. I mean, you saw the difference from 2023 when he had better protection and he had, Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey to throw it to versus 2024. When he didn't have that stuff, there was a bit of a difference. I think Ward is someone who is capable of creating something out of nothing. Carson Beck, to my expectation, doesn't quite have that same level of playmaking magic, but I think in the context of a sound playbook and with some talent around him, I think Carson Beck can end up being a high-end NFL quarterback. I mean, his stock took a little bit of a hit last year, but heading into the 2024 season, he was a preseason Heisman Trophy front runner and a first-round graded guy. So he's going to try to get back to that this year.
Alex, do you have 2 more minutes for me?
Sure, always.
Okay. Well, Christine is in our chat room, and she's asking about other Miami prospects in the draft. And I'm actually going to go specifically because I don't think the Giants are after a tight end. So I don't think they're going after Arroyo. Okay. But I could see them drafting another offensive lineman, and Jalen Rivers certainly would be a guy who's going to interest NFL teams. Damian Martinez, the running back, is going to wind up being a pro. And Tyler Barron, the edge rusher, to me, I got a feeling that he could be a good value later on in the draft. I don't think he's going to be very high, but I think the value could be there for him. What do you think about those 3 guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Tyler Barron. He is an NFL player. Like, he's an NFL body. He's a really hard worker. I think he's going to be a great teammate wherever he goes. And when he's on, he's virtually unblockable. The only issue, and we throw positives and negatives, right? Tyler Barron, for whatever reason, was feast or famine last year at Miami. Spent the 1 year. So there were certain games where 2-3 sacks, he's creating havoc in the backfield. Other games where you're like, I just don't see him. Is he on the field? I don't see him making an impact. So it's like he started the season really strong, finished the season strong. He had a bit of a lapse in the middle. But I don't know the full context to that, Paul, because sometimes players deal with injuries during the season. We don't necessarily know. I know that was the case for another one of Miami's top defensive linemen who's not draft eligible yet, but Ruben Bain had a little bit of a down year last year, but he was dealing with an injury for most of the year. So I don't know the full context with Tyler Barron, but I will say when he's on, he's on. So he's got tremendous pro potential. You brought up Jalen Rivers, who is Jalen Rivers was honestly one of my favorite guys to cover at Miami for 4 or 5 years. Even the COVID year confuses me. I don't remember sometimes if I cover guys for 4 or 5 years because they got that
club, Alex.
Yeah, but Jalen Rivers, I think the big thing that he did for his NFL stock was at times at Miami, he started basically at every position but center. Probably, I mean he. Early in his career, you thought, okay, Jalen Rivers is, potentially one of the better left guards Miami's had in a long time. By the final 2 years of his career, he's the full-time left tackle, and he's doing a darn good job at it. Now, I think Rivers is likely going to be a guard in the NFL, but the good news is he's played both spots. He's played every spot. He's very well cross-trained, and he's really solid, Rivers. So, I think he's the type of guy I think can have like a 10, 12-year solid NFL career. And then Damian Martinez, you mentioned the running back. Man, he was his journey was interesting last year, Paul, because he got to Miami late. He wasn't there for spring football. He got there like right in time for the July, August practices and stuff. And it's you could definitely see for Martinez, there was an adjustment to Miami's playbook, Miami's blocking schemes, and kind of the style of running. So like early in the year with Martinez, we were kind of wondering, like he's hesitating a little bit before he, hits the hole. He's stutter stepping a little bit too much. But then at some point, about a third into the season, just a switch just flipped for him. And Martinez became a guy that, he didn't like start the year as Miami's best running back. It looked for the first few weeks like Mark Fletcher was Miami's top guy. But by the middle of the season, Damian Martinez was the man. He was able to adjust to it. And, what I think about Martinez is going to translate very well into the NFL is he really thrives on contact. I mean, he does have breakaway speed in his arsenal. He scored like a 70-yard touchdown in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, had a couple of long runs broken off last year. So he's got the speed to finish his runs, but he's also got the ability to shed tackles and cut through tackles. And of course, makes him very reliable in short yardage situations, but he's not strictly a short yardage back. So, and he takes very good care of his body. The guy's built like an Adonis. Actually, I saw, Martinez also, I saw him at Pro Day last week, and I think he did pretty well there as well. So I think Martinez, to me, I know the running back market is weird because teams, in the draft, you never know where, this running back, is he a second round pick? Is he a fourth round pick? It's a little bit unpredictable with that, but Martinez, to me, he can be a featured back in the NFL.
See, so at least if the Giants don't get a hold of Cam Ward, there is a possibility they'll get another hurricane to help them out.
Yeah.
Alex Donno, thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy watching the draft, and maybe we'll catch up to you again sometime.
I'd love to. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your show.
Be well. Great stuff. Absolutely great stuff from Alex. And again, folks, that's why we do what we do. We try to do everything we possibly can to bring you the we're having some issues here with the there we go. There, we're back. Issues with the studio. Great information from Alex. And it's like 99.9% certain Cam Ward is going to the Tennessee Titans at number 1. And it's going to take a ridiculous offer for them to trade out, which is why over the last couple of weeks, as I've heard some people say, the Giants really need to go Cam Ward. Now, of course, they got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston now. So as you folks know, if you've listened to me now for quite a long time, I have never been about taking a quarterback at number 3, and I have never been about trading up to the number 1 spot. It's not realistic. Not with the tools that Ward has that makes him much better than the rest of the QBs. Tennessee is desperate for a quarterback. I don't see any way that they would trade out. Anyway, I appreciate Alex's input. It sounds like he kind of feels the same thing. And he's down there with boots on the ground in Miami. And so that just fortifies my feeling there. Now, here's what's interesting. We know the second pick is held by the Cleveland Browns. And there's been talk about Shedeur Sanders. There's been talk about Abdul Carter. And there's been talk about Travis Hunter. Now, why wouldn't there be, right? They do need a quarterback. And so for those people who think that Sanders is that high of a value, he should be in the conversation. Obviously, Carter and Hunter are by far the 2 best and highest graded players in this draft, hands down. Nobody disagrees with that. I mean, I've seen some people say that Cam Ward would be a top 10 player in terms of grade, but he's not the number 1 player in this draft. Hunter and Carter are 1-2 or 2-1. That's just the fact. That's universally accepted by everybody, or pretty much everybody. So the Giants have themselves, in my opinion, in one way, a great opportunity, because you stay at 3 and you're going to get one of the 2 best players in this draft. The issue, as Christine has just put up on the chat, and I do believe it is an issue, your medical staff is going to have to check off and give you a green light on Abdul Carter's foot. He has that stretch reaction, that weakness in the bottom of his foot. He did not work out at Penn State's pro day. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, said it was because of a lingering shoulder issue. Does that make you just a little bit queasy? So the question becomes, folks, and this is what I pose to you, and you could give me a call and do an audio call. You could do a video call if you like, or you can hit me up in the chat. That's fine too. My question for you folks, let's say Ward goes 1 to Tennessee and Hunter goes 2 to Cleveland. And you all know I'm all in on Travis Hunter. I have been without any wavering. I have been all in on Travis Hunter at number 3. But what if Cleveland takes Travis Hunter at number 2? Do you take Abdul Carter at number 3, even if your medical people give you a yellow flag about his foot? Or do you take the next highest graded player on the board, who is probably defensive tackle Mason Graham out of Michigan, who I also absolutely love? Or do you try to trade down and get out of the 3rd spot and try to pick up some extra draft capital either this year or perhaps next year? Again, that question is, if Ward and Hunter are the first 2 picks, do you take Carter regardless of the injury question? Do you take Mason Graham, or do you have somebody else you like? Or do you trade out and try to get more draft capital? Let me know. Call me up, video call me, head over to the chat, do whatever you like. Let's talk about it. All right, let's see here. What do we have here? Let me catch up on some of these chats. The Big Moose says, Paul, we have 2 veteran quarterbacks with over 24 years of experience. Why draft Sanders, who won't start a game this season? Well, you know how I feel about that. I'm not drafting Shedeur Sanders. I want the number 3 pick to start right away. I think Travis Hunter is the way to go. Yeah, but Big Moo, I just gave you the question of the night. What if Hunter goes to Cleveland? What do you do? I'm probably, unless my medical team gives me a red flag, a yellow flag, I might still take Abdul Carter. A red flag, I can't. I can't take Carter. I just can't. And I would explore trying to trade down a little bit and see what I could get. See what kind of ransom I might be able to get for somebody who might want to come up to 3 to either take a gamble on Carter and his injury or potentially take Shedeur Sanders. That's kind of how I feel right now. I could change my feelings based on if we get more information about Abdul Carter's foot. But as it stands now, that is a serious warning sign for me, because I've seen too many players over my career who have been sidetracked by foot injuries. And quite frankly, it limits their potential as players. In addition to giving your head coach agita each and every week, not knowing how much that guy can practice, and then you just hope that you get him out there in the games and he's going to be ready to go. It's a problem. So, again, I think, I know we would all like to hear more now. Before the draft, there is a secondary round of health checks for anybody who had a physical red flag during the combine. There are back checks before the draft that the league can ask for all of the players who showed up with an issue. I do not know the date of those checks, but I would be very interested to hear what comes out of those checks regarding Abdul Carter, because he is quite the talent. Again, he's one of the two best players, highest graded players in this draft. No one is going to argue that. But if the injury is going to limit his production and or potential, oh man, what a shame that would be. And it would have to be taken into account. There's just no other way to digest that. All right. The Big Moose says, I also really like Carter, but just worried about the so-called foot injury, stress fracture, or whatever different people seem to say gets surgery. Some say not to send him to HS. Oh, not some say not. Send him to HSS and find out. Well, he doesn't have to go. That's the problem. You know, I think he will go to the NFL back checks before the draft. That, and I'm not even sure if that's mandatory, but I do believe that that's where he's going to go. And that medical information gets disseminated to all of the NFL clubs. So I'll certainly be very interested in that. Christine says, agreed, love Carter, but his foot bothers me. I understand. I totally understand. All right, folks. So I'm asking you the question. We're about half hour into the program, and the question becomes, if Ward and Hunter go 1-2, what are you going to do at number 3? That becomes a sticky situation because of Carter's medicals. All right. What else did we want to talk about tonight? Well, I got something I want to talk about, and that has to do with the NFL rules. Now, you guys know they passed at the league meetings. They just passed a couple of NFL rules changes. And I want to tell you, one, I'm okay with the new overtime rule. They're taking the playoff rule where each team has to get the ball at least once, and that's going to be used in the regular season now. That's fine with me. I think that's long overdue. That's fine. I do think it stinks when a team gets the ball, goes right down the field, scores a touchdown, and then it's like, oh, well, if they kick a field goal, the other team gets the ball. But if you get a touchdown, the other team doesn't get the ball. What, are you kidding me? How is that equitable? Doesn't make sense. So I'm good with making sure that each team is going to have to get the ball. So let's see here. What I don't like is that it's not a 15-minute overtime. I don't like 10 minutes. Nope. Teams can use ball control and really milk that clock ridiculously long. I don't think 10 minutes is appropriate. I think it should be 15. And I don't want to hear that that's too much strain on the players. Please, give me a break. All right. So both teams get to touch the ball, and I think that that's really good. All right. Now, modified kickoff rule has been changed. And K. Saint says, what's your thoughts on the new kickoff rule? I find it odd that the touchback goes to the 35-yard line. Why not just make the kicker start from the 30 like it was before? K. Saint, here's the problem. The NFL, to their credit, they want to keep the kickoff in the game. And I agree with that, by the way. I don't want to lose the kickoff. I don't want to see the ball spotted at the 20, 25, or 30 coming out of a commercial break and not have a kickoff. Let me make that very clear. My primary objective in any of this particular conversation is to keep kickoff in the game. Okay. Having said that, I knew there had to be modifications. Now, if they just move the kicker back 5 yards, I think it is the opinion of the league and the competition committee that there are too many robo kickers in the league who can boom the ball and it won't matter. Just moving them back the extra 5 yards isn't going to make a difference. These kickers today, I mean, it's ridiculous. They all have cannons for legs. So moving them back 5 yards is not going to change the amount of touchbacks. I'm sure that they immediately got rid of that thought, right? All right, they want to see fewer touchbacks. They want to see more returns. So if moving the kickers back 5 yards isn't going to result in any fewer touchbacks, what could they do? Now, Kate's saying, here's the interesting part about this. Last year, when they put in the new modified kickoff rule, the first thing that I said, and I was very vocal about this because I do love the game and I love everything about the game. But there are a lot of rules that I don't necessarily enjoy very much. And I think there are some rules that need to be put in and some others that probably need to come out. But my first thought was, if I'm a coach and they're going to touch back my kickoff to the 30-yard line, I'm going to kick the ball through the end zone every time. And if you watch the New York Giants this year, they did that more often than not. Very few times did the Giants kick off short of the end zone. It was Brian Dable's choice and the Giants coaching staff's choice to just say, fine, kick it off, take the touchback, and let the other team start at the 30-yard line. That was their prevailing feeling, and it was my feeling too. The second the rule came out, I said, you know what? I'm not screwing around with this. I'm not taking a chance that some funky stuff is going to happen and somebody's going to get a big return or take it for a touchdown. Just give it to them at the 30. Kick a touchback every single time. That would have been my instructions if I were a head coach. I said it then, and I kept saying it all season. It did not surprise me that the Giants kept booting the ball through the end zone. I often said to myself at the end of the season, you know, if they are going to tweak this rule, I wonder, there were whispers at one point last year that they might tweak it and bring the touchback out to the 35. And my first reaction was, I'm not so sure I'm going to kick the touchback anymore. 35 is like a major penalty. Think about it. What used to be a touchback to the 20 now is a touchback to the 35. That is a 15-yard personal foul penalty. That's too much. I'm not a fan of that. So I think strategically now on every kickoff, I would have to make a decision based on the game situation, the guys I have on special teams, the guys the other team has on special teams. I would have to make a strategic decision on every kickoff, whether or not I want to put it through the end zone or not, with this new rule of taking the ball out to the 35. Now, you're going to say to me, well, is the 5 yards that big a deal? Case sake, I did some research. The average NFL drive last year was 29 yards for the season. Okay? The average NFL drive is 29 yards. So, if I'm giving the ball to the other team at the 35-yard line, and they just have an average drive, which basically means 2 first downs and then 4th down. That's going to result in them getting the ball to my 36. Because from their 35, go 29 yards, which is the average NFL drive, that takes the ball to my 36-yard line. and a 4th and 1 situation. You know what they're going to do from there? They're going to kick a field goal because that's a 54-yard attempt. Nowadays, field goals are 18 yards from the line of scrimmage. They used to be 17, but they've been backing up a little bit. So it's a 54-yard field goal, which in today's game is a 50-50 proposition. That is a very makeable kick in today's game. You see, when the kickoff rule only allowed a touchback to come back to the 30, well, do the math on the equation that I just gave you. Now, if they get the average offensive drive and they're stuck in a 4th and 1, they're going to have to kick a 59-yard field goal. I'm not so sure. 59? I'm not so sure. I don't know exactly what the numbers are at that range, but it's a heck of a lot less than what I perceive to be about 50%. Because I think that's what most of the kickers in this league now, they're about 50% from beyond 50. But 59? That's a lot. That's not necessarily going to be points. But from the 54, I'm pretty sure that most kickers in this league are more than capable of making a 54-yard field goal. So that's why I think moving the kickoff touchback to the 35 is a significant development. It is a very harsh penalty for a touchback on a kickoff. And I would not be so quick to tell my kicker to boom the ball through the end zone every time. No. That's a problem for me. So now I would have to be strategic on each of my kickoffs and figure out how I want to play it. I think it's going to add a lot more consternation to the special teams coordinators as they figure out with their head coaches, what do we want to do on this particular kickoff? That's how I feel. Do any of you have a feeling about the new overtime rule that each team has to touch the ball at least once during the regular season? Do you have a feeling about the new kickoff rule? Christine says, I agree. I see that. Yes. She seemed to be surprised that 29 yards was the average offensive drive in the NFL. No, that's what it is, 29 yards. Oh, you know what? I didn't put K-Saint up on the screen before. I apologize. I didn't pick the Big Moo up on the screen before either. I know you guys like to see your logo and your name there, so let me just throw those back up there anyway. Okay, there we go. Christine says, your thoughts, options on later round players, interior defense or offensive linemen? Well, I think the Giants should take 2 defensive linemen. They already signed Chauncey Golson from the Dallas Cowboys, who is a potential 3-technique defensive tackle who can rush the passer and a edge-setting, run-stopping defensive end. I think he's an incredibly valuable player because of those 2 things that he can play. In effect, he can play a role similar to what Justin Tuck did with the Giants. And he's not Justin Tuck. Please don't call Justin up and say that this guy is going to be the next Justin Tuck. Don't do that. I didn't say he's the next Justin Tuck. But the Giants could use him in a similar fashion. If they could get half the production out of him that they got from Justin Tuck, that would be wonderful. Okay. So I do think the Giants need to take 2 defensive linemen, a plugger, a run-stopping defensive tackle, and also a 3-technique guy. I do think the Giants should, at some point, still add another corner for depth. I also believe the Giants should add another interior offensive lineman to enhance competition. Russell Wilson is on the shorter side, and when he drops straight back into the pocket, you have to keep his windshield clean. So it's important. I know the Giants will roll him out a lot. He does like to roll out and make throws on the run. And that's important. He's got to do that because he can't see over a lot of the defensive linemen. But if there is pressure in the front of the pocket, that causes him tremendous difficulty. So I would add competition to the offensive line room in the interior of the offensive line. What else would I do? I'd love to see them get a battering ram of a running back. I think that would be a really nice advantage to have. And I probably wouldn't mind getting another blazing speed wide receiver, a real burner. And those are the things that I would like to add. And it could be even a late veteran free agent. You know, remember when they got Fabian Moreau off the scrap heap right at the beginning of the season, and he wound up starting the whole season for a playoff team in 2022. I'm fine with that. Now, I'm not saying, you know, you're going to get someone to start because you don't need anyone to start right now. You have Tay Banks. You have Paul Adebo. You know, you have Cordell Flott. You have, you know, Drew Phillips in the slot. But it wouldn't be so bad to add another corner at some point. You can never have enough corners. I swear, and I don't know, I haven't counted it up. I didn't go back and do the stats. I probably should have. But gut feeling says to me that in the last 10 years, the Giants' corners and the Giants' offensive linemen have been by far the two most injury-plagued units on the roster. And so I'm all for getting what you can get to add depth and competition at those positions. K-Shade says, thank you. Well, there you go. You are very welcome. NFGL Broadcasting Network. Well, that's a new one. I don't recall seeing you around before. NFGL Broadcasting Network. All right. Well, he says, Paul, do you think the new kickoff rule will help the offense to score more points? Well, excuse me. Here's the thing. As I do believe it's going to create more returns, I do believe that for the very reason that I just explained to you. It's going to give me a lot of trepidation to just automatically kick the ball for a touchback, given that it's coming out to the 35. Now, just because of the average drive, yes, you will probably wind up on people who do take the touchback, people who do boot the ball through the end zone. You will probably see they're going to give up some more points this year. I mean, the odds are, just based on the averages, the odds are they will give up a few more points. But more importantly, if there are going to be more returns, if the special teams units can find ways to break out and get some big-time yardage, well, that in itself changes field position, and that will also lead to more points. Unless, of course, the kick returners and the return setup teams are not very good. So then when you ask your ticker to pooch the ball inside the 20, if the returners are not very good and the kick return teams are not very good, well, now you're going to be able to hold teams probably inside their 25. See, that's why I said it's strategic. You have to figure out on each kick, do you want to put it through the end zone and give it to them at the 35, or do you not? If you've got really good coverage guys, right? Really good coverage guys, and you don't think the other team can match up with you on specials, you're probably going to pooch the ball into the landing zone and take your chances that you might even be able to stop them inside the 25. I think the circumstances will now dictate for these coaches who, like myself, like Brian Dable, decided just kick it through, take the touchback. We don't care. Put it at the 30. No big deal. Those kinds of coaches are now going to have to think about it because the 35 is a nasty penalty. Christine says, just looking for depth as well. So important. Timothy Benays, one of our other regulars. Paul, why don't they think Joe has yet to extend anyone from the 2022 draft class? Would like to see Micah or Wan'Dale get extended. Timothy, here's the thing with that. The Giants are very button-mouthed or tight-lipped, if you will, about any of their deals. You will recall just the other day when Joe Shane had his press conference at the owners' meeting and even at the combine, they wound up re-signing Darius Slayton. And he flat out said to all the writers, you guys didn't know it, but we were negotiating an extension with Slayton from the middle of the season on. So I don't know if they're talking to Micah McFadden. I don't know if they're talking to Wan'Dale Robinson. Contractual conversations are things that go on upstairs in the Giants facility. Now, even though I'm one of the official New York Giants broadcast team members, those conversations do not include me upstairs. I'm downstairs where the studios are. So, Timothy, all I can say to you is it's possible that some of those talks have taken place, and maybe they're trying to do something. I just don't know. So, that's about all I have for you on that. All right. Let's see. What else do we have in terms of the rule changes? What else was there? Okay. The first downs. That's another one. Okay. I think that this is a lot of nothing. I don't think this really means a whole lot. Okay. They're going to use camera-based technology instead of chains to measure first downs. Please. Folks, don't let them fool you. This means absolutely nothing. Okay? The officials spot the ball where they're going to spot it. You have officials who are coming from the near side or the far side, and they spot the ball where they're going to spot the ball. Ultimately, it is the human eye and the spotting of the football that has more impact on whether or not a first down has been gained, as opposed to the chains or some technology, some lovely cameras that are going to be spread all around the field. If the ball is not spotted correctly, the chains will show you that it's not a first down, or the cameras will show you it's not a first down. It doesn't make any difference. It's the spotting of the ball that has the most impact on the measuring of a first down. Nothing more, nothing less. This rule change about using cameras to identify a first down is window dressing and 100% pointless. All right. What else do we have here? Okay. 5 new penalties can now be overturned by the booth. Hitting a defenseless player, face mask penalty, horse collar tackle, tripping, and roughing or running into the kicker. I love it. They got something right here. These are huge, huge penalties. And I think we would all agree that none of us want to see a huge penalty, especially in a critical spot, help determine the outcome of a game. It's one of the reasons why I always favored replay. Get it right. You see, my problem here is that I love the game. I respect the players and I respect the coaches. We owe it to them to get it right. That's how I feel. We owe it to them. We owe it to the fans. We owe it to the organizations. Get the call right as often as you possibly can. Now, see, I know the league doesn't want to hear that. I get it. The networks don't want to hear it either. I don't care if the game goes 4.5 hours. I really don't. Get it right. Legislate the game correctly so that the player's skill can determine the outcome of a game. Now, I'm just joking when I say a game goes 4.5 hours. Okay, that's not going to happen. But, you know, when they started tinkering with the games and trying to shave 10 minutes off the time, shave 15 minutes off the real time, oh boy, 4 o'clock game can't go to 7:15 because we're going to delay 60 minutes. You think I care? No. The heck with 60 minutes. Let it be delayed 15 minutes. I don't care. I want the refs to make the right call. I want the team that deserves to win to win. Let Uncle Charlie, who's sitting in his reclining chair, wait an extra 15 minutes to see 60 minutes come on the television. Man. Anyway, I know everybody wants to condense everybody's game. They want to condense baseball. They want to condense football. Let's make the games as fast as we possibly can. I know that's what everybody's trying to do. I get it. But this is good. These are significant penalties that can now be overturned by replay. And I think that's good. I'm glad. Good for them. All right. The tush push. Oh, wait. Cal 1906. Thanks for the special teams feedback. Any update on Theo Johnson tight end? Yeah, actually, Cal, there's some video up on social media of Theo Johnson working out, taking some pass routes and stuff. That just popped up within the last 48 hours on social media. So he's obviously doing much better. I have not seen Theo since the season ended, though. Christine says yes, and she agrees 100%. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, so the tush push. Now, the way this goes is the NFL has to get 24 of 32 team owners to support or deny a rule change. They have pushed the tush push issue back to the next meeting in May. Now, here's the deal. I'm willing to buy the NFL's mandate to try to make the game safer. Why wouldn't you want there to be fewer injuries in the game? It's a great game. And if you can prevent some of the punishment that these players have to take and endure, I'm all for it. Let me make something clear. As old school as I am, and I am old school, and I love the game, but I do think if we have the opportunity to do things to make the game safer for the players, you absolutely owe it to them to try to do it. Let me get that out of the way immediately. And so, having said that, I think the tush push comes under safety. Now, you're going to say to me, well, how many players have gotten hurt while trying a tush push? Well, we know the Giants had John Michael Schmitz and Daniel Bellinger get injured on a tush push play that the Giants tried last year. Okay. I don't want to necessarily use that as the impetus to eliminate the play. Here's why I would eliminate the play. What do we see in the playoffs? If you allow the tush push to continue, defensive coordinators, as they showed us in the playoffs last year, the best way to stop the tush push is to launch a defensive player head first like a missile across the line of scrimmage into the quarterback. Physically, that is the best way to stop the play. I don't think there's much doubt about that. I do. I believe that that's probably the best way, the most efficient and effective way. Now, I know some other teams have tried the tush push and they haven't been as effective because maybe they haven't blocked it right. But if it's blocked correctly, I think launching a defensive player at the quarterback is probably the most effective way to stop it. Would we all agree that that's a very dangerous thing to do? Come on, people. Asking a defensive player to launch himself over the line into the quarterback. I don't think it's very safe for the launcher, and I certainly don't think it's very safe for the quarterback. So, if as a league, they continue to allow the tush push, what have you done? You're going to encourage that kind of play? Now, we saw it in the playoffs, and what did the referees do after the second time? Well, we're going to have to award a score, we intentional delay a game. No, wait a minute. You have a defensive player who's trying to time his launch to get to the quarterback to stop a play that is being blocked correctly. Well, isn't that the core of what football is? Right? The offensive coordinator schemes up a play that he believes, if blocked correctly, will work. And the defensive coordinator is supposed to scheme up a defense and a way to legally stop that play. So to tell the defensive coordinator you can't launch a player, that's not fair, because that's probably the best way to stop the play. So it would not be fair to just outlaw the launch. That's not fair. It's just not, because the tush push is blocked correctly. It's going to work every time. And now you're telling the DC your best weapon against it is eliminated. That's not fair. No matter how you cut it, that's not fair. So, my feeling on this is you omit the play. That makes it real simple. You don't want to be unfair by telling the defense they can't do the thing that they want to do to stop it. So, to me, that's not part of the equation. So now, what can I do to enhance the safety of the game to try to see that no one's going to get hurt on this particular play? Because I don't think it's right to outlaw the launch. Well, then you get rid of the play that caused the launch. That's the tush push. So, sorry to the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni, and all of their fans. I would be a huge proponent of getting rid of the tush push. I don't think it is a safe play. I think it encourages a dangerous play. And if the league really cares about the safety of the players, that's certainly a play that does not need to be in the game. Christine says, I don't like it, the tush push. Gary Gaston says, hi, P-Dot. I see Wilson got the number 3 from Banks. Yes, Russell Wilson did procure uniform number 3 from Tay Banks. That was cool of him. We need him to step up this season. I'd like to see both Wilson and Banks have a great season, to be honest with you. Christine says to Gary, I didn't know that. Well, that just happened this afternoon. I think it was shortly after lunch, if I'm not mistaken. Christine says, everything in NFL is about money. Just play great football. And I miss the old days. I understand, Christine. I understand. Look, here's what's very interesting. And I yes, I'm old school, but I also appreciate, some of the great things that they've done and they've added to the game. I mean, replay is great. They didn't have replay years ago. That was terrible. So I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. They didn't have replay years ago. When I started watching the NFL, the goalposts were in the end zone. And then they moved them to the back line. You don't know how many guys used to run into the goalposts, the stanchion. And, of course, there were teams that would use them as picks on offense. I mean, that was a great improvement. Absolutely. Get those goalposts back. I mean, so not everything from the good old days was great. They've done some good things to help the game out for sure. All right, let's see what else. See if we got anybody else here in the chat. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. Tree pollen is a very big issue right now if you have allergies in the New York metropolitan area, specifically over in North Jersey. Tree pollen is a very big issue. And it's kind of got me a little bit. Not terrible, but a little bit. Enough that my goal tonight was just to do 90 minutes. And we're closing in on 9:15. So I'd love to try to get it to 9:30, but for some reason, we're not getting a lot of chats on this on tonight's program. We got almost 1,000 live views watching the show, but I'm not getting a whole lot of chats. Christine, you're kind of holding up your end of the bargain by consistently getting in on the chat. Well, thank you, Christine. Feel better. Yes, indeed. You too. You're getting in there all the time, but I don't see many of our regulars getting in on the chat, and I don't have any phone calls coming in. I don't have any video coming in. Yes, Christine, the Knicks play tonight. I know they're playing Cleveland. Do I even want to look at the score? All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to look at the score. I don't know if I want to do this, but I'm going to do it. Oh, how bad is it? I got a bad feeling it's not going to be good. Oh, boy. Wow. A bad third quarter. Getting blown out again in the fourth. I know they're still underhanded. I get it. Still underhanded. Look at this. They were up 60-53 at halftime. And then got hammered in the third and hammered in the fourth. Yes, Christine, they played great in the first half. I could see that. Oh, my goodness. What are you going to do? Oh, wow. This is rather interesting. I'm just looking at the box score. For those of you who don't know, yes, in addition to being part of the Giants broadcast team, I am a diehard Yankees, Knicks, and Rangers fan. Okay? Now you know, full disclosure, in case you haven't figured it out by now. Unbelievable. And of course, look at this. The Cavs shooting 53% for the game. Why does that always happen to the Knicks? Okay? When they play some of these really good teams, one of the reasons the Knicks have trouble is because these teams can't miss. I swear to you, every time they play the Celtics eat a can of Popeye's spinach and decide that night they're going to make everything that they throw at the rim. It's just automatically going to go in. That's just the way it's going to be. And obviously it happened with Cleveland again tonight too. How are you going to beat a team that shoots 53% from the field? Unbelievable. All right. Hey, it is what it is. All right. So let's see, folks. Oh, here we go. Christine says, always does with the Knicks fans for life. Isaac Morris here. My man P-Dot. There you go, Isaac. He's one of my guys. He's one of our regulars who's on the program. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to go back to the question that I asked you guys earlier, and nobody really seemed to want to answer it, and I don't know why. We have almost 1,000 live viewers on the program right now. Some of you folks must have an answer. If Cam Ward goes 1 to Tennessee and Travis Hunter goes 2 to Cleveland, what should the Giants do at 3? Come on, folks. You got to have some answers for me. I see 3 options, but maybe you have another one, right? You take Abdul Carter and don't worry about the injury factor. You take somebody else. I would throw out Mason Graham as a possibility. Or you just say, you know what? That's it. I'll just trade out. Now, here's my theory about trading out. If I were to trade out, and I talked to John about this earlier on BBK, if I was going to trade out, I want to get a number 1 pick next year. That's what I want. You may not get that from anybody, and then maybe, that eliminates the trade out option. But what I want to do by trading out, if I'm going to move down a few spots, however many it's going to be, I want draft capital for next season so that if I need to maneuver in the 2026 draft to get one of the supposed 5 first-round quarterbacks, I would have extra draft capital to make some moves. I want the flexibility to make some moves next year when I would potentially be trying to find the young franchise quarterback that the Giants obviously still need. All right, here we go. Isaac says, sorry I'm late. Christine says, all right, she's got an answer for me. Abdul Carter or Mason Graham? Well, that's a 2-part answer. You kind of need to pick one, but at least you tried. I appreciate that. Christine says, I like that thought on a possible trade. Well, that's the way I see it. I don't know how the Giants would see it, but if you're not going to take a QB, Isaac says, take BPA. And now Christine says, take Carter. Okay. It just seems to me, and Isaac says, or trade down. There you go. It seems to me, right? Unless you wind up taking a project quarterback on the second day. Now, let me go on record as saying, of the later project quarterbacks in this draft, there are 3 guys who I kind of like. Jackson Dart, who I suspect you're going to have to get late in the first round. So I don't know how realistic that is. You'd have to make a move. I do like Jackson Dart. He is somewhat erratic. Okay? He is somewhat erratic. And he's going to have to clean up his mechanics. But I do like him. Now remember, if you do take one of these projects, they're going to sit for a year. They're going to redshirt. They're going to be behind two veterans. So you won't need to worry about them playing. They're just going to have to work on their craft. That's what makes them a project. The other two guys I like later on is Tyler Shuck out of Louisville, who has very good traits, but not a lot of game action and experience because he was hurt a lot in college. But I would certainly think about him. He might go in the second round, to be honest. A lot of football people at the combine were saying he's the sleeper quarterback of the draft, and his traits are so good that you may have to take him high. I thought going into the combine, he might have been a fifth-round pick. But then after I got out of Indy, I was pretty sure he was going to be a day 2 pick. Now, here's the other thing. My third quarterback, and I think he's a third rounder. Maybe you even get him at the top of the fourth. Remember, the Giants have picks 99. It's a compensatory at the bottom of the third, or 105 at the top of the fourth. That's Kyle McCord of Syracuse. I do like him. And I think you could get him that late. And I think he's a legitimate project. I would not be against anything the Giants do to get Dart, Shuck, or McCord as project quarterbacks. I think all three of those make sense to me based on what I've seen of those guys. I would also, as you people know, if you've been following me at all, you know I would have no hesitation about not taking any quarterbacks and just waiting until next draft or next offseason and free agency or whatever it is. I do think that's a viable option. And I've been saying that all along. So I'm not going to change. I do think that a viable option is you're just waiting another year for the guy. But if you're going to take a project quarterback, my three in order are Dart, Shuck, and McCord. Okay, let's see what we have here. Isaac Moore says, you see McCord, what do you think? Isaac, I like him. He's sturdy. He's a pocket passer. He's assertive. They can trust him. He's very smart. He's mostly accurate. Does not have the strongest arm, but good enough. Not very mobile, but has escapability, enough escapability to make throws out of the pocket. I think Kyle McCord could be pretty good. I do. Christine says she likes McCord too. Isaac Moore says Milroe athletic as hell. Oh, you're absolutely right. Also as erratic as hell. I would not touch Jason Milroe. He's all about the legs. Maybe, just maybe, he might be better off even playing another position in the NFL. You know, he has no touch. He's inaccurate. He can't feather the ball. He has great difficulty in the red zone. I'm just not, if he goes to somebody who uses him as a package quarterback, right? And I'm just going to use this as an example, like when Lamar Jackson first got to the Ravens or the Saints had, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name now. Taysom Hill. That's it, Taysom Hill. If a team wanted to take Milroe as a package quarterback like that, remember Slash with the Pittsburgh Steelers? You know, that's what we're talking about, right? I think that's what Milroe is going to be best utilized in the pros. I don't think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. All right. Yes, don't forget, Jordan Reed of ESPN going to be coming on the Locked On, which Patricia Traynor, who's in charge of the New York Giants on SI Page, she does her own show over on Locked On. She's going to be doing this program tonight with Jordan Reed. And Jordan's really good. Really good. Hey, Christine, you just stole it right out of my mouth. Milroe, project quarterback, running plays. Yeah, that's what he is. He's a runner more than he. Now, he has a cannon of an arm. He just doesn't know where the ball's going. Isaac Moore says, I saw Patty's pod with Jackson. Christine says she likes McCord. Christine says, if it doesn't work out, draft again next year. Christine says, Patricia, I will catch up on your shows. Isaac Moore says, Taysom Hill. Yes, that's the guy I was looking for a minute ago. All right. Isaac says, Coach Gene is great too. Yeah, Coach Gene is part of the New York Giants on SI Network as well. They call the Giant Issue. Christine says she's going to watch. All right. I appreciate that, Patty. Thank you. All right, folks. Well, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, and I know we have over 1,000 live views, and I'm really appreciative. A lot of you guys came in late, and I am sorry for that because I'm fighting this tree pollen thing. The allergies are just really, really kicking in, and I am exhausted. So I'm only going to give you 90 minutes tonight, but I hope it was enough. Let's see. What do you have here? The Focus says, oh, Christine, thank you. I appreciate you. The Focus says, don't like title option for the Giants. I think Russell Wilson may surprise people this year. You may want to resign him because of Tyler's age. There'll be pressure to start him after a year. I don't think so, to be honest. I don't think so. And here's the reason why. He's mature. He's very, very, his demeanor is outstanding. I met Shuck at the Combine. Very impressed with him. He looks like he came out of Central Casting, honestly. And I don't think that he would have any trouble being patient. And because quarterbacks in today's league easily play until they're 40, I mean, okay, so he comes out now as a rookie. I think he's 25, maybe 26, but I think 25. You're going to tell me that, potential 15-year lifespan or career span is not enough? I don't have a problem with that. I just don't. I mean, how many quarterbacks, right? Think about this, right? Didn't Eli play 14 years for the Giants? How many quarterbacks, can you go into saying, oh, he's going to be our guy for 15 years? So I don't think his age is an issue. I really don't. And from what I could tell at the Combine, age was not an issue for anybody there either. If anything, they were more concerned about his fractured leg that he had earlier in college and also fractured collarbone that he had earlier in college. Christine says, you're the best. I appreciate that, Christine. Thank you. Back at you. Isaac says, would you rather see them draft a project or prospect quarterback? I'd rather draft a project quarterback this year and draft a prospect quarterback next year. Isaac, I've been consistent on this ever since the season ended. I mean, no matter how many flip-flops and waffles you see in the papers or you hear on TV or you hear on the radio, there's one thing about this guy right here. I'm going to tell you the way I see it, and I'm not going to flip-flop. And I'm not going to say stuff just because the angry mob or the crowd wants it to be. I'm not here to placate people. I'm here to try to tell you what I see and what I know based on my knowledge and my experience. And I've said consistently since the start of the season, I would not draft a quarterback at number 3. I have never wavered on that. No matter how many other media people may have, I've never wavered on that. I would not personally do it. But that's me. I'm not Joe Schoen. Okay? I am not Joe Schoen. So I don't know what Joe Schoen's going to do. I'm telling you that I would not do it. Scott Young says, Paul, I'm with you as well. I have severe allergies and it's killing me. I'd like to chime in tonight, but boy, I feel like crap. I hear you, my man. Christine says, Tyler Shook looked great at the combine. He spoke well. Yes, he did. He certainly won the podium. He was terrific. So was Jackson Dart. Very professional. Isaac says, one thing I know, they better not pick a quarterback at 3. Took the words right out of my mouth. Guys, I appreciate you. We got over 1,000 live viewers right now. Again, if you're joining us late, okay, Alex Donno is the post-game radio host for the Miami Hurricanes football team. He joined us. If you want to get this program on the archive, the first 20 minutes or so, it might have even been 25 minutes, I had him on the program, and he gave us a lengthy and extensive look at what Cam Ward is all about. It is his opinion that he's going to the Titans, and they're not going to move out of that spot. They're going to take it. I think most people kind of believe that right now anyway. But if you want to go back and listen to Alex, he's got great detailed information of somebody who has been around Cam Ward all season long. It's very enlightening. I certainly enjoyed it, but he did hammer home the point that the Titans are expected to take him. So, I don't see how realistically he comes into play to the Giants at all. They're not going to trade their entire draft to move up to number 1 to get Cam Ward. I don't think that's realistic. So that's where we are. I invite you to go back and listen to the interview with Alex. And again, I invite you to come back next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for another live edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. We certainly hope to get ourselves another guest, have another great topic to discuss. And until then, just have a great week, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino, and we will see you next time.